The rain was falling softly outside, tapping against the window like a slow, sad song. I sat in my old rocking chair, the firelight flickering across the wooden walls of my small house. My grandson, Ethan, sat at my feet, his eyes wide with curiosity as he asked me to tell him a story about my life. I hesitated for a moment, then smiled faintly. "All right," I said quietly, "but it's not a happy story. It's the night my son turned his back on me." I still remember every detail of that moment. My own son, Daniel, looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Mom, you can't stay here anymore." At first, I thought he was joking. I even laughed a little, waiting for him to smile and say it was just a misunderstanding. But he didn't. His face was cold, his voice even colder. He said, "Jessica doesn't feel comfortable with you here. You've become a burden." That word, burden, hit me harder than anything I'd ever felt. I raised that boy with my bare hands. I worked 2 jobs, skipped meals, walked to work in the snow, just so he could have a good life. And now the same child who once cried in my arms after nightmares was pushing me out of his home. The silence that followed felt endless. Even the ticking clock seemed to stop. My suitcase sat by the wall, untouched, as if it, too, refused to believe what was happening. I wanted to say something, but my voice wouldn't come out. I looked toward Jessica, my daughter-in-law, standing in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, her eyes refusing to meet mine. I could feel the distance between us like a wall of ice. I whispered, "Daniel, please, this is my home too." But he didn't reply. He just turned away. That night, I sat in the guest room, unable to sleep. I stared at the shadows on the wall, wondering how love could fade so completely. When morning came, I decided to leave quietly. I couldn't bear to see his face again, not like that. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my packed suitcase, my heart heavier than the bag itself. But then, just as I was about to stand, there was a knock on the door. A firm, unexpected knock that startled me. For a moment, I thought it might be Daniel. Maybe he had changed his mind. My heart leaped with a foolish kind of hope. But when I opened the door, it wasn't him. It was a man in a long brown coat, holding a wet envelope. "Mrs. Miller?" he asked. I nodded, and he handed me the envelope. "From your late husband's lawyer," he said. "I was told to deliver this personally." My breath caught in my chest. My husband, Richard, had been gone for 5 years. We thought everything about his estate was already settled. I stood there in shock as the man tipped his hat and walked away through the rain. For a long moment, I just stared at the envelope, afraid to open it. My fingers trembled as I finally tore it open and pulled out a letter written in Richard's handwriting. The moment I saw his familiar script, my eyes filled with tears. The letter read, "If you're reading this, Mary, it means life has tested you again. Don't let them take what you built. Everything, the house, the land, the savings, it's all under your name." I made sure of that, because I knew one day love might fade in others, but I never wanted you to lose your home. I pressed the letter to my chest and cried. Richard had always been a quiet man, but even in death, he found a way to protect me. I looked around that house, the same one I had cleaned, decorated, and filled with love for decades, and suddenly, it didn't feel like a place of rejection anymore. It was mine. Every wall, every photo, every corner still carried a piece of me. I wiped my tears, took a deep breath, and realized something important. I didn't need Daniel's approval. I didn't need anyone's permission to exist. That day, I didn't walk out broken. I walked out free. But what came next would change everything. Because when Daniel and Jessica found out about Richard's letter, and that the house was in my name, the truth shook our family to its core. And what happened after would test the meaning of love, forgiveness, and family in ways none of us could have imagined. The days that followed were quiet but heavy. I stayed in a small cabin outside town that belonged to an old friend. It wasn't much, just one room, a stove that rattled when it burned, and a window that looked out toward the hills. But it was peaceful. After everything that happened, I needed peace more than anything. I spent my mornings making tea and reading Richard's letter over and over, reminding myself that I wasn't forgotten, that at least one person in this world had truly loved me till his last breath. A week later, I got a call. It was Daniel. His voice sounded tight, cold, but with a hint of panic. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk. It's important." For a moment, I considered ignoring it, but a part of me, that motherly part that never really dies, couldn't. So I agreed to meet him. When I reached his house, I could already feel the tension before stepping through the door. Jessica was sitting on the couch, her face pale and her eyes sharp. Daniel looked restless, pacing the floor. He didn't even say hello. He went straight to it. "Why didn't you tell us about Dad's will?" I blinked, confused. "What about it?" I asked. He threw a folder on the table. "The lawyer called me. He said the house is under your name, all of it. You knew, didn't you?" I could see the frustration burning in his eyes. Jessica crossed her arms and spoke softly, but her words were like daggers. "We thought we were going to inherit it, Mary. We've been taking care of this place for years." I looked at her, the woman who called me useless just days ago, and I almost smiled at the irony. "Taking care of it," I said quietly. "You wanted me gone from it." The room went silent. Daniel looked away. I could feel his pride battling with guilt. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt him. But I also wasn't going to apologize for something I didn't do wrong. "Your father made that choice," I said gently. "Not me. He wanted me to be safe. He knew what it meant for a woman my age to lose everything." Daniel sat down, his hands covering his face. Jessica, though, didn't stop. "So what now?" she said. "You're just going to take it back? Leave us with nothing?" I took a slow breath. "I'm not taking anything," I said. "That house isn't just wooden bricks. It's where you grew up, Daniel. I'd never take it away from you. But you should remember who built it. Who stayed up nights sewing clothes when we couldn't afford heat. Who kept that home alive when everyone else gave up." Her expression softened slightly, but only for a second. She looked down, fidgeting with her ring. Daniel finally lifted his head, his voice breaking. "Mom, I didn't mean what I said that night. I was angry. I stopped him gently. You meant it in that moment. And that's enough to tell me something, son." There was a long pause, one of those moments where the air feels heavy with everything unspoken. I looked at him and smiled sadly. "You have your family now. You should take care of them. But I'll be fine. I have what your father left me, and that's enough." I stood up and turned toward the door. He didn't stop me this time. Maybe he didn't know how. When I got back to the cabin, the quiet felt different. It wasn't lonely anymore, it was peaceful. I poured myself a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the sun go down. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt whole. But just when I thought that was the end of my story, something unexpected happened. A letter arrived a few days later, slid under my door. It was from Daniel. His handwriting was shaky, like when he was a little boy. Inside, there was a short note and a photograph, a photo of him, Jessica, and their daughter, Lily, standing outside the house. The note said, "Mom, we realized we were wrong. Please come home. Lily misses her grandma." My hands trembled as I read it. I didn't know whether to cry or smile. All those years of sacrifice, of being unseen, maybe, just maybe, they had finally opened their eyes. But I didn't rush to answer. I knew forgiveness needed time. And deep down, I still wasn't sure if they wanted me, or just the comfort of what I represented. That night, I lay awake, listening to the rain again, the same sound that once brought me pain, now whispering peace. I thought of Richard's letter, of Daniel's voice as a boy, of the woman I used to be before life hardened my heart. And I whispered to myself, maybe this is not the end, maybe this is a beginning of healing. But I was wrong. What happened next would shake everything I thought I'd understood about family, forgiveness, and truth. The secret Richard left behind wasn't just about the house, it was about something much deeper. And the day I discovered it, my whole world shifted once again. The morning sun spilled through the window, painting soft golden lines across the wooden floor of my cabin. I sat at the table with a cup of coffee, holding Daniel's letter in my hand. His words, "Please come home," echoed in my mind again and again. I wanted to forgive him, I truly did. But forgiveness is not as simple as saying the words. It takes courage to let go of pain, especially when that pain comes from the people you love the most. A few days later, I decided to visit the lawyer mentioned in Richard's letter, Mr. Harris. I wanted to understand everything my husband had left behind. Maybe it would help me make peace with what had happened. When I arrived at his office, the old man greeted me kindly, his eyes full of quiet understanding. He offered me a seat and handed me a thick brown folder. "Mrs. Miller," he said, "your husband was a very thoughtful man. Before he passed, he left not just one letter, but two." I froze. "Two?" I whispered. He nodded and opened the folder, pulling out an envelope sealed with wax. He asked that this second letter only be given to you when your son tried to claim the house. My hands trembled as I reached for it. I broke the seal and unfolded the paper slowly. The handwriting was Richard's, neat, steady, full of warmth. It read, "Mary, if this letter has found you, then you faced what I feared most, the day our son forgot what love really means. But don't hate him. Life changes people. We get busy, proud, lost. Inside this envelope, you'll find a second document, a trust fund I created years ago. It's not for you. It's for our granddaughter, Lily. She will inherit it when she turns 18. I wanted you to know this because someday, when she asks about her grandparents, I want her to know her grandmother never stopped loving her family, even when they forgot her." I couldn't hold back the tears anymore. My chest tightened, and my vision blurred. Even after all the hurt, even after being pushed away, Richard had chosen love over resentment. He thought beyond the pain, beyond the betrayal. And in that moment, I understood what real strength looked like, not revenge, not bitterness, but compassion. I sat there for a long time, staring at that letter. Then I folded it carefully and placed it back into the envelope. When I left the office, the world felt brighter somehow. Not because everything was fixed, but because I finally saw what mattered. That evening, I walked back to the house, the same one I had left weeks ago, with a broken heart. Daniel opened the door before I could even knock. He looked tired, worn, and much older than his years. Jessica stood behind him, silent but softer than before. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then Daniel stepped forward and said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I should have never said those things. I was selfish, and I don't deserve your forgiveness." I looked at him. My son, the same boy who once ran barefoot through the fields, chasing dreams I'd worked so hard to give him. My heart ached, but it also felt full. "Daniel," I said gently, "I already forgave you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Holding on to anger only makes the soul heavy. I've carried enough weight in this life." Jessica wiped a tear and stepped closer. "We want you to come home," she whispered. "Lily keeps asking where Grandma went." For the first time, I smiled. "I'll visit," I said softly. "But this time, I'll keep my own place too. Sometimes love needs distance to breathe." They both nodded, and I could see the relief in Daniel's eyes. We sat together that evening, talking for hours. We laughed, we cried, and though the scars were still there, something new was growing, understanding. Later that night, after they'd gone to bed, I sat by the window and looked at the stars. I took out Richard's letters again and whispered, "You were right, my love. Family isn't about what you own. It's about what you give, even when it's not returned." I thought about Lily, her bright smile, her innocent heart, and I knew Richard's final gift wasn't just money. It was hope. A seed planted for the next generation. A reminder that even when people forget your worth, kindness leaves a mark that never fades. The next morning, I packed my things and headed back to my cabin. As I walked away, I turned for one last look at the house. The same home that had witnessed love, loss, betrayal, and forgiveness. I whispered, "Goodbye, Richard. I'll take care of them, just like you wanted." When I got back home, Ethan, my grandson, looked up from his toys and asked, "Grandma, is that the end of your story?" I smiled and stroked his hair. "No, sweetheart. That's not the end. That's just life. It breaks you, tests you, and then gives you another chance to love." I looked out the window, the sun blowing warm across the hills. "And maybe," I said softly, "that's the real inheritance, not money, not houses, but love that refuses to die, no matter how many times it's forgotten."